Welcome to Yes and Land, where we say yes to the reality of yesterday and today, and we say and to the possibility, growth, and imagination of tomorrow. Today's episode is about the difference between what Stephen Covey called the behavioral ethic and the character ethic, and some of his habits for highly effective people. Today, I'm joined by Shea Owens. Shea, glad to have you here today.
I'm thrilled to be here. I appreciate the invite. It's going to be fun. I'm excited.
You bring a really interesting and unique background to the table and a pretty steady presence as not just a divorce attorney, but also a sitting judge. So we're going to talk about that a little more today, about your background, kind of where you came to be where you are now. And we're also going to talk about some of Stephen Covey's work, right? Yeah. About character ethic versus behavioral ethic and his first 3 habits that he talks about and teaches about. And we're going to look at that through the lens of one of, I think, your favorite Disney movies, which is Remember the Titans.
Remember the Titans, yeah.
Which is a great
football
one.
Movie. Yep,
it
classic.
is. Like, when I told my wife last night, this is what we were doing today, she was like, Ryan, that's like my favorite movie. I was like, your favorite? She's like, well, of all time, probably top 3. Yeah. I was like, really? So she loves Remember the Titans. In part, my wife really loves like the based on true story type movies.
1970s in Virginia, for sure.
This is certainly that, right? This is certainly that. So it's a great movie. So as we kind of jump off, what I want to do is kind of introduce you. Like, let's talk a little about like where you came from. Where did you grow up and what's your story? So let's start with there. Where'd you grow up?
Yeah, so I grew up in Alpine, Utah. So I was born in a little podunk community in southern Utah called Panguitch, my favorite place in the world. I love it. It's where I live today. It is absolutely the best place in the world. I was born there. Both my parents grew up there, but my dad took a job in the software industry when I was 3 years old, and we moved up north. So I grew up in Alpine, Utah. When I started in Alpine, it still had farms, still had ranchers. I left and did a church mission for a couple years after high school, and when I came back, everybody had sold their farms and just built these huge houses all over, and there's just, Yeah,
Alpine is like a very well-to-do area.
Yeah, it's a really affluent area right now. The house I grew up in, we grew up on a 2-acre parcel there, and it was great, a ton of fun. People that bought it from us just tore the house down and built a big old mansion on it, right?
I'm sure.
And so the house I grew up in isn't there anymore, but I loved growing up there. It was great.
Now, for those who don't know Panguitch, what was the population of Panguitch back then, and what is it now?
It was 1,500. So I'll tell you a couple of funny stories. About 1,500 people back when I was born there, and it's still about 1,500 people.
Not much growth.
It might have grown a little bit. There's the subdivision I live in is like, there's a couple new subdivisions, and when we moved there 10 years ago, we were the only house in the subdivision. But that developer's kind of continued to build homes and sell homes, and there's probably about 50 homes there now, and that's the biggest growth probably in the county, like in the city there. My grandpa, who was a mayor and a county commissioner and superintendent there for a long time, used to say, that's the great thing about Panguitch is nothing changes. We've got 1 stoplight and 1 attorney, and that's how we want to keep it. And then the week I moved there was now 2 attorneys in town, and the stoplight got struck by lightning and quit working. So,
oh man, fortuitous timing. Like, watch out, Shea's in town. He's an attorney. He's here.
No, it's growing a little bit. I think they might be like at 1,800 or 2,000, and it fluctuates a little bit. Like the summers are more populated. Obviously, it's sits at almost 7,000 feet. 6,666 feet is the elevation of Panguitch. So people come in the summer because it's nice and cool. The summers are just gorgeous. It's right next to Bryce Canyon, 25 minutes from Bryce Canyon, 60 minutes from Zion Canyon. So it's just really
You've got some
place.
Of the absolute best national parks around. I mean, those are incredible.
Yeah, it's my friends. They love to come stay because it's a great kind of launch point, right? You can go see Bryce Canyon one day, go see Zion Canyon the next day. You can even make it out to Capitol Reef. It's a great spot.
So what drew you back to Panguitch?
If I'm being honest, I did law school in Washington, and that's when Nadine and I got married, and loved Washington, kind of loved being out by ourselves. And we moved back to Utah County, took a job with Parsons, Bain, Latimer here in Salt Lake, and that's where I started my legal career. And we loved it. It just felt super regular every day. Like my friends from high school are all still around, and they're the best people in the world. They're all really successful, and they have gorgeous families. But that was who I was hanging out with, the same kids that I was hanging out with since I was 5, you know.
Sure.
And it was just really regular and really routine. And we kind of started thinking, I wonder if we should leave the state again. We had really enjoyed kind of being out of the state. And so I started looking around, and there's a guy named Mike Noel. He was a state legislator. He's retired now, but I got a call from him kind of out of the woods saying, hey, we need somebody come down in Panguitch, and I know you've got ties. And so we started talking. What had happened, I don't know if you guys remember the whole incident in Bunkerville with Cliven Bundy and his family. Are you familiar with that story at all?
No.
Okay, so Cliven Bundy, and I'm not going to tell this great, and I'm very much not going to pick sides because both sides have some flaws in this story. And you could probably do like a 5-hour. In fact, I've listened to podcasts like 5 hours long about this incident. But Cliven Bundy's a rancher. A lot of ranchers have what they call leases on public lands, or they have permits to graze on the federal public land. And there's a whole history with that, and whether or not that's a right or if it's a privilege, and that kind of through time has fluctuated between being a right to graze and a privilege to graze, and what do you actually own, or are you just renting and leasing? And there's this kind of whole mess there. And there's some people that really advocate that you don't need a permit. You have this right based on property, and other people advocate, no, you need a permit. The federal government owns it. Anyway, the Supreme Court in Clep or Cleppy, depending on how you say it, it's an old case from New Mexico, came out and said, no, the federal government has the right to regulate the land that they own in any way they see fit, essentially. And so since kind of like the 1970s, when FLTMA was passed, they've really kind of regulated that a little bit more. Anyway, there were some disagreements about how he should manage his cattle on the property, and back and forth over 20 years, and they ended up taking away his grazing permit. They say, the federal government will say, well, he didn't pay our fees, and he'll say, well, I took my check to the office, you just wouldn't take my check. So I tried to pay my fees, right? Anyway, there's a lot of information on both sides. I want to be very clear, like, I'm not trying to advocate for the federal government, and I'm not trying to advocate for the Bundys in this scenario. But they took away his permit, and a lot of ranchers rallied around him. And so there was a standoff in Bunkerville, Nevada, which is just barely south of the I-15 border, like in between St. George and Mesquite.
Oh, man.
Bunkerville's right there.
Okay.
And it had the freeway shut down. If you look it up, there's lots of pictures of these cowboys on cows. There's the federal government there, you know, decked out with their guns. And it's like literally a standoff, like a bunch of guys on horses with guns, a bunch of federal agents.
What year was this?
This would have been 2016, 15 or 16, I think 2016.
10 years ago.
Yeah, 10 years ago.
Oh, my goodness. That's it.
That's it.
I don't know why I didn't remember this.
And they were down there. And this was kind of a long time coming. I remember in law school reading about the Cliven Bundy and some of the issues he was having, and somebody doing in my public lands, federal public lands law class, we were reading about Cliven Bundy and this conflict between, you know, recreation and agriculture on federal public lands. So anyway, there's this big standoff, and there were a lot of people from southern Utah, Paiute County, Garfield County, Kane County, that went and kind of supported this. And there were a lot of people that didn't go and support. And, you know, I'm not saying that it was good to go or bad to go. I'm just kind of telling you the story, right? So some people went. Anyway, there's a guy named Angus McIntosh who kind of was immediately after this and part of this. He had this big dissertation for a PhD. I can't remember what school he was doing it for, but basically talking about how you don't need a permit to graze on public lands. And he was going around. He's not an attorney, but he did have a PhD. And he was going around presenting this information to a lot of producers, cattle producers in southern Utah, saying, hey, you guys should just like rally together and not sign your permits and just go graze on the land. And it was getting a lot of attention. It was making the governor nervous. It was making some state legislatures nervous. And there just wasn't a lot of legal representation in southern Utah in this area. So my mom's family are cattle ranchers. They have federal grazing permits. My uncle still had a federal grazing permit on the Forest Service. And I think that's why Mike Noel called me. He knew my grandpa from being in politics together. And so he called me and said, hey, would you ever come to Panguitch and see if you can like help us with this issue? And I told him, I said, I would love to. There's probably more intelligent attorneys than me, and this sounds like a big problem. But he's like, we would like somebody that has some roots here that we feel like maybe people can trust. So not because of any any talent I had, but just because of the connections I had, he called me and I took that job, and that's where I was for the last 10 years was in Panguitch.
So you go down there because of this big case, this big standoff. So what happened?
So it actually gets really interesting and crazy. It stayed pretty heated for a while. The federal government walked away, which I think was the right call. We didn't want to shoot people, and we didn't want to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They kind of walked away, and I think they went back and arrested Cliven Bundy and one of his sons kind of more privately. They didn't impound the cattle like they were trying to. They just kind of went back and arrested him. They ended up in prison for a bit, awaiting trial. The prosecutors, I'm not sure if I'm going to get this right, so please don't quote me on this. But I think the federal government had bugged or spied on the Bundys and maybe bugged their apartment, and they made this allegation in their defense and requested the surveillance tapes. The prosecutor said, like, no, there's not tapes. Turns out there was tapes, and the prosecutors knew about it and hid it from them. But there was some malfeasance on the prosecution side. Uh-oh. And so the case got dismissed with prejudice because of the malfeasance on the prosecution side. So they never got prosecuted for anything that happened there.
And then they got released from prison.
And then they got released from prison. Yep. And then part of that same group was what took over in Oregon. There were some ranchers in Oregon that did a controlled burn. They tried to burn their own property. It's a technique that people have used for hundreds. The Indians used to burn to try to like refertilize the ground. And there's a lot of health and science for the economy about fire. Anyway, fire got out of hand and went on to the federal side of the fence, right? They have the private land, went onto the federal side of the fence. They were arrested because the federal government didn't think it was an accident as much as maybe there's some intent to it. There's some back and forth there. And so the same kind of group with a guy named Finicum. Is it Finnegan? Oh, I should have I didn't know we were going to talk about this. He's from, I want to say Fredonia, Arizona. Anyway, they went up to Oregon. I can't remember the nature conservancy up there, but they like took it over, right? They went and took it over. Just, what do you call, occupied it, right? Yeah. And the federal government showed up. Anyway, this Finicum, he ended up getting shot.
Oh my!
By the federal government up there. His family still is in southern Utah. I've met his sister a few times since then. I'm actually really embarrassed. I can't remember his name. I'll have to look it up here in a second. But you know, that was kind of the same group of people. Some people call them militia, some people whatever. But it's kind of the same group of people that were there on the standoff in Bunkerville. Went up and did that in Oregon, and that's when this guy got shot. And then I think there were some charges up there too. And I'm going to have to go back and look and see what the result is. But I don't think the prosecution worked up there in Oregon either. So anyway, you have this kind of starts of some kind of uprising in Paiute and Garfield and Kane County and Iron County and Wayne County, these counties down there where people are ranching. And I'm actually really sympathetic to the producers down there, and there's so much that goes into it, and we're not gonna be able to like talk about that all day, but I want to be very clear. I was not like sent down there to like temper this.
Sure.
You know, I just kind of sent down there to help.
Yeah.
And really kind of look at it. I do have some, and I've been open about this with the producers, so I'm like worried that they're gonna be listening to this and like call and yell at me. Right. I do have some very like strong concerns with Angus McIntosh and his position. I don't think his conclusions of the cases that he reviewed are accurate. I think they're somewhat.
And he's the one who's not an attorney.
He's not an attorney, but he did a lot of legal work in his thesis, right? And the example. God, I wish we could have talked about this 3 years ago, and I used to talk about it a lot more, but. The example that I remember a lot from, he took a case out of California, and it was a probate case. And the issue in front of the court was whether or not the permit to graze, the value of that permit should have been included in the estate, right? And the court said, yes, it has value. It should have been included in the estate.
Makes sense.
And he took that to jump to like, oh, that's a right, just like a property right, because it was needed to be included in the permit estate. And to be true, it is kind of weird because people buy and sell permits all the time, and they'll borrow money from the federal government for this permit. But the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, or the Forest Service, they don't recognize the value of it. It's just strictly an administrative. We give you permission or we don't give you permission, and then it gets traded on the market between, different properties. So it's kind of a weird thing. But they said no, there's a value to it to get traded on the property. So you have to include it in your estate. And he's like, so see, therefore it's a right, and the courts recognize that it's a right. And I think that's a big jump.
Yeah,
is all I'm saying. And so he did some things like that with his dissertation. And so I am a little critical of Angus McIntosh, but I'm very sympathetic to like this really kind of like sucky predicament that these producers are in all the time, where, they have something that they're really not allowed. I don't know how you say it. They're really not allowed to grow it and improve it because there's all these other interests in it. But their livelihood depends on it, right? Like, it's like if you could never grow your law firm, if you could never improve your law firm, you just had to, and then every year everything else gets more expensive, right? You just kind of like slowly getting your livelihood taken away. And so they're passionate about it. They really are. And there's some problems with the system, and everybody from the federal government side, the Forest Service, everybody's going to agree, like, it's not a great system and we need some work to be done on it. And people try, but government's hard, right? Yeah. So anyway, so I was down there kind of working through that mess for the last 10 years. We spent a lot of time.
So before you got to that point, let's roll it back to your decision to go to law school.
Okay.
I want to know about like why you became an attorney in the first place. So when did you make that decision? You're like, I want to be a lawyer and potentially be dealing with these land and cattle problems. Like, when did you decide you wanted to be a lawyer?
So you're probably not going to love this answer, and it's not going to speak very highly of me. I used to always I'm still not great about planning for the future, but I graduated high school with like no interest in, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Sure.
I was able to go play football at Dixie State Junior College, and as an 18-year-old kid, that was the best thing in the world for me. Like, it's all I really cared about, right?
For sure.
So went down there. Remember Coach Croshaw, meeting with him before the season at the beginning of the semester, kind of saying, so tell me, what are you thinking? What your goals are? And I'm just like, look, I'm here for a semester, then I'm gonna go serve a church mission. And that was like the furthest I had thought was never past age 19, right? A semester at Dixie. And that didn't really change. So I came back, I got an Associates of Arts from Dixie.
Okay.
I tell this story a lot, and I'm probably taking up way too much time.
Perfect.
This is a story I tell that just kind of like shows how clueless I was, right? So I leave Coach Croshaw's office from that meeting. He's like, hey, you need to get your classes. You don't have your classes scheduled. This was like 2002. So we definitely had computers. I don't know why we weren't like registering our classes online, but you actually had to go to the registrar's office and they'd walk you through it. I don't know if that's the way it was when you did your undergrad, your first semester, but I walk over to the registrar's office and there's just this long line, like all the way out the door, literally out the door, people in the hall and out the door. Thought, I'm gonna be here forever. And Coach I don't know if Coach Croshaw made a phone call or what, but the second I got there, some guy poked his head out of the office and yelled my name, Shea Owens or whatever. And so I walked clear to the front of the line. He pulls me into his, and he says, hey, and I gotta be clear, like, I'm not a great football player. Like, out of the 55 kids that made the travel roster, I was probably 54.
What position were you?
I played cornerback and safety that year.
Okay.
I was really like at the bottom of the food chain. I'm not like, anyway, but they treated me like I was a good player this one time, I guess, and calls me to the front of the line, and he's like, hey, so what classes do you want to take? I'm like, I just don't really know. And he looks at, I had decent grades in high school or whatever, right? And so he looks at my transcript, and like 5 minutes later, he hands me a schedule. I didn't pick a single class.
Wow.
Yeah, it was great. It was every class I went to was like pretty easy.
Yeah.
I don't want to say like anyway, I got, really good grades my first semester and didn't have to work all that hard.
He knew what his assignment was.
Yeah, he knew.
He understood the assignment.
He did. And I had a great schedule. Anyway, I came back. I served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in South America, so I was able to learn Spanish.
Where at?
Chile.
Yep.
Chile.
Remind me where, because I think I knew this.
Antofagasta.
What is it?
Antofagasta. So
Okay.
It's now two different missions. I think it's Antofagasta and La Serena, but it was the top three regions in Chile. So the Atacama Desert, if you ever heard of the Atacama Desert, it's like the driest place in the world. When I was down there, they used to talk about this rainstorm in Antofagasta that killed 100 people. I kind of looked into it. It rained an inch. It killed 100 people.
Because they're just so used to being dry.
And just the landslide, you know, like all the sand and people. Yeah. So it's super, super dry. I never saw a single drop of rain the whole 2 years that I lived in Antofagasta. Not a single drop of rain. It's right on the coast. You got the Andes Mountains.
I'm like the opposite because you know where I went?
Yeah, Washington.
Seattle. I went to Seattle where it's like if it doesn't rain, you don't know what's happening. Like, wait, it's not raining? Like you have like 3 weeks in the summer where it doesn't really rain. And like, everybody like thinks these 3 weeks are like amazing, and then the rest of the year just rains.
Yeah, complete opposite, 100% complete opposite. Anyway, so I was able to test out of some Spanish credits when I got back. Got a semester's worth of credit there. Ended up leaving Dixie with an associate in arts and no clue what to do. I moved to the Caribbean for about a year. While I was in the Caribbean, a former football coach who is now an athletic director at Southern Virginia University called me and said, why don't you come out here and finish your degree? So I went out there, finished my degree out there, played another couple of years of football, and ended up getting a bachelor's in liberal arts.
Okay.
Which is sure, right? Like, I don't know why I ended up
like
there.
What in liberal arts? Like, what was your focus?
I don't really have football. Does that count as my focus?
Apparently that's okay. That's a liberal arts focus on football.
Yeah,
there we go.
It was a liberal arts degree. I mean, took a lot of philosophy classes. I had this great professor. He took us on a trip to Rome and Greece, Professor Armstrong. That was a ton of fun.
Yeah.
I learned a lot there. Kind of, I guess, philosophy. That was a lot of what I studied. I had an English teacher. This is getting so random. I'm so sorry, but this is kind of a funny story that I was laughing about with some friends the other day. I had this English teacher, and she was great. And I turned a paper in, but the paper was due Monday. I got a concussion playing football on that Saturday at our game.
Oh, boy.
And so I turned the paper in Monday. I told her, hey, I've finished this over the weekend, but I did get diagnosed with a concussion on Saturday. So if it's a little blurry, please forgive me. And she's like, okay, don't worry about it. And I got a good grade on the paper, and I think she was just being nice to me, right?
Sure.
Anyway, we're like this was the very beginning of the semester, right? We're at the end of the semester. I'm still turning papers in. I'm still getting good grades. And she comes up to me with like a couple weeks left in the semester. She says, are you still feeling kind of foggy? Do you think this is ever going to quit? I was like, oh my gosh. So she thought the whole semester that I had was like suffering from these concussions. And so my writing must have been terrible, but I ended up with a good grade. And
she's like, he has to be concussed for this to be what he's writing.
Never realized that like I kind of got over that and my mind was back to normal and I shouldn't have had any problems. But anyway, it worked out for me.
It worked out great.
And I was like, I think I'm getting there. I'll come around.
I'll come around eventually.
Anyway, so I ended up with a Bachelor of Liberal Arts and graduated. The president of the school there was an attorney. Smith was his last name. And I had met him a few times, and I was really impressed with him. And he had spent a lot of time working in like legal issues with the NCAA. So there was a running back from Ohio State the year they beat Miami in the national championship. What was his name? Anyway, it was the same time around when LeBron was going to the NBA, and he wanted to go to the NFL after his freshman year, but the NFL made you stay for 3 years back then. I don't know if they still do that. And anyway, he ended up getting in trouble with guns in his car or something like that, and Rod Smith was the president, and he at that time had like worked on that case, and and that really kind of like interested me that you can in law you can really do anything, right? You can work in football, you can work in basketball, you can work in divorce, you can work in public lands, right? Like you can really do anything with the law. And so that was kind of my first like thought, well, maybe law school would be something that I would like, because at this point I still did not know any idea what I wanted to do in life. I graduated. I took a job working for a nonprofit group, Community Health Connect, and they did a lot of work with doctors' offices. And I did that for a year, and I thought, I think being a doctor would be a great thing to do. I mean, kind of on your feet a lot. You're not really in front of a computer. You get to interact with people. You solve problems. I thought I really like that. And then I went and looked, and I didn't have a single prerequisite to go to medical school. Like, not a single one. Like, it would have been like 3 more years of, I would have had to go get a whole new degree, right?
Yeah.
And so then I took it, and I kept doing that, and then I started teaching ski school at Snowbird, and it was in their adaptive program, and then I started driving truck and just kind of doing random things for a couple years after my undergrad, really not having any clue what to do. And at some point, I just thought, I'm gonna do law school. I don't know what else to do. I'm gonna do it, and
Sure.
it worked out good for me. But yeah,
And with law school, there's no prerequisite. You just need a degree.
yeah, take the
anything.
LSAT, yeah,
And then take the LSAT.
Yep.
It's always interesting. I knew I wanted to go to law school, and a lot of times people would assume that I was majoring in pre-law, and then I'd have to break it to them like, there is no pre-law major. It doesn't exist.
yeah.
I don't really know why. I don't know why we don't have a pre-law major. Like, it would make sense that we do, but we don't. So you just, any degree, and take the LSAT and you go.
You take the LSAT. Yeah, and it was great. I had family up in Spokane, so not Western Washington,
Yeah.
like Seattle, where it's super wet, but a little wet. And
Yeah.
I had a great time up there. But yeah, that's how I ended up in law school. And then, they have those programs. They're always trying to place you after law school. And Parsons Bailey had sent out some information over there, and I'd applied to Parsons Bailey and got accepted. Got an
Nice.
offer there. So that's how I ended up at Parsons Bailey.
So then you're at Parsons Bailey. You get recruited back to Panguitch to go help kind of calm some tension over some issues there with some land and cattle. You're doing that for a while, and then what spurred the change because the first step you had was becoming a judge.
Yeah,
before you
so-
joined RCG. So tell me more about that.
Yeah, so that's one of the perks of my position there is I got to know the counties in the area a lot, and a lot of the county commissioners and things like that. And Kane County had a judge that was retiring, and so I thought, it's a part-time job, so it's not full-time. And I thought maybe I'll just try to do that, and I'll work 4 10s for my current job, and then an extra 15 hours for this other job or whatever. I can't remember. I think it's about 15 hours a week. And so I applied for it, and I interviewed for it, and I was definitely not the best candidate. There were better candidates for me. But these rural communities are great, and they like being rural, and they really value their culture. And I think I was just a better cultural fit. I don't think they wanted anybody from the other candidates were all from St. George, which to even, to some of these rural cities, St. George is a big city, right?
For sure.
They didn't want big city people coming and telling them how to live their life or whatever. So I was really fortunate, and I got the offer to go be the judge in Kane County. It's for Kane County, Kanab City, and Big Water City. And I don't know if probably nobody knows where Big Water is unless you've gone to Lake Powell, but it's this little teeny town anyway to Lake Powell. Turns out the administrative office of the courts had an issue with me working for both the executive branch and the government and the judicial branch of the government. They felt like that was, while it technically wasn't prohibited by the code, that there were some issues there and didn't give off a good appearance. So you need to give off the appearance of impropriety, and they just were worried about that. So I had to quit my job with the state or quit my job as a judge. I'd been doing the public land thing for 9 years. I really, really enjoyed it. I didn't really want to leave, but the more I sat down and thought about it, I thought maybe a new adventure was good for me at that time. So I accepted.
Being a judge is a cool thing.
Yeah, it's been really fun. I've grown a lot. I've learned a lot. I'm still learning a ton from it. But so yeah, I kind of pulled the trigger, and that's when before I called the commissioners and accepted the job, I got on and I just said, I don't even know if I could get a new job because my skill set was so niche, and so RCG was like the first thing that popped up on Indeed, and then Joey called me like 2 days later. He's like, "Hey, why don't you come in for an interview?" And yeah, I didn't put much. It just seemed like a really good fit. I didn't really have to think about it, so thanks for that. But yeah,
one of the things that we've taken more, I guess, focus and attention to once Joey joined is the smaller towns in Utah. Joey is, as you know, he's small town Price, Utah,
yeah.
right? And there's just a need. There's a need for additional legal help in these smaller communities because sometimes it is more limited. And the nice thing is because things like Zoom or WebEx are so common, you can have so much broader reach across the state, and so we can service so many more people, so many more citizens of the state of Utah because of that, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
So you start this position, and it's a big change, though. What was it like for you when, one of the things you're talking about is kind of not sure what you're going to do? What's been underneath your willingness to take a step into the unknown when you don't really know and you're not really sure with the end in mind? That's one of the things we're going to talk about, right?
Yeah.
Start with the end in mind. Begin with the end in mind. So you start law school, not really sure where you're going to go. You take a stab at going down to Panguitch, not really sure what that land management position is going to be. You do the same thing with becoming a judge. You do the same thing with becoming a divorce attorney. Where does that come from for you to give you like the strength to do that?
That's actually a really good question. I guess a perspective I've always had in just kind of general, maybe in life is like you've got to grow, right? You've got to try new things. It's okay to fail. Like that's part of the process. And so I think just moving to Panguitch was really more about like having a different experience, trying to grow. And we grew a ton when we moved to Panguitch, and I took that new job, and there was a lot of vocational things that I grew on. I learned a lot about public lands law that I didn't know about. I learned a lot about, state law and government and politics. Really, I learned a lot that I really didn't know. But I think the same kind of thing. I got to a point where like I needed a new adventure, or I wanted a new adventure. The only flaw with the job I had before is that was the job I was going to keep having, right? It was this position in Panguitch, and it was just always going to kind of be that position in Panguitch. And the state's good. They have a good retirement package. They're fairly, they're somewhat competitive with their salary. It's always going to be a little less when you're working for state than when you're in the private sector. But it was, everything was good, but it was just kind of, it was starting to get a little stale. And so, the new adventure, the new growth, I think it's important to always be growing. And I think that's kind of what makes me not afraid to make those choices, I guess. And I'm a pretty conservative person. Like I'm not super risky, right? So it must have been pretty stale for me to be like, I'm going to jump forward, right? But no, I was good. Just kind of wanted that new experience. I was really worried I was really worried about what the financial consequences were going to be, because, when you're moving from full-time job to just a part-time job, you're definitely taking a pay cut. But that's worked nice to find this job where I could do both. So
yeah, for sure. So let's kind of move into talking about Remember the Titans, and then we'll start talking about kind of some principles from Stephen Covey's book that we'll kind of pull out of it. So for that, I mean, coming from a football player, I guess it makes sense that this is a favorite of yours because it's a great football movie. Set the stage for the movie Remember the Titans.
Yeah, so I think it's 1971. I have to go back and watch, but 1970s Virginia football. Still kind of segregation is a thing back there in Virginia. And this is when the state decided to bus kids and make the blacks go to school with the whites, right? So their integration is kind of the setup here. And so the movie centered around a football team. T.C. Williams, I think, is the high school. They're integrating. They're going to have black players and white players on the same team and in the same school. And just the point of the movie is, one of the points, I guess, is how football like helped unify or helped integrate the schools, right? And particularly these athletes that had to learn to like respect each other as people, had to grow in their character and to grow in their mindset about each other and learn from each other and kind of build unity to be able to have a successful football season. Yeah. Because we all know football is Shane Gillis does a really good joke about integration in football, right? And all it took was one winning season, and now we're all happy with it's a pretty funny joke. But yeah, football's a big deal in Virginia.
It is. In the South, it's huge. And with that, so they're integrating the players, and one of the unique things here too with this school was the way that they worked it with the coaches. So at the school itself, there was a white coach, and he was a very good coach.
Coach Yost.
Yeah. By all accounts, like he was very good. He was a very winning coach.
Candidate for the Hall of Fame.
Yes.
Actually was expected to be inducted in the Hall of Fame that year.
And then they bring in Coach Boone, right?
Yep.
Who's an African-American coach from whatever school he was at. And at first, as I was rewatching the movie, it was going to kind of be that Coach Boone was just going to kind of be alongside him, maybe in the assistant coach. And then it was like they're going to be co-head coaches. And then suddenly Coach Boone is the head coach and Coach Yost is the assistant coach, which was like a big deal in the community, right?
Yeah, big deal in the community, and probably kind of a big deal for Coach Yost too, right? It's a little bit of a, I mean, there's a lot going on here, right? So you don't want to say like a little bit of a slap in the face, but you've earned a head coach position, and you're not getting it, right?
And I think many people wouldn't have blamed him if with a demotion, because he was demoted, if a demotion, he would have left.
Just walked away.
And that's what's so interesting when you look at that kind of the story for him, of him deciding to stay and believing in something bigger.
Well, and yeah, I'm going to speculate here. Like, I don't know Coach Yost, but I'm guessing, and from what you kind of get from the movie is a lot of that is he felt a loyalty to the players that were already there.
Yeah.
Right. Like somebody needed to stay. If he walked, what were they going to do? Right. You only kind of get one shot at playing high school football, right? Like as a coach, you can coach many years in high school football and for different schools and stuff. As a player, you kind of only get one shot. And so he felt some loyalty to these kids. Like, hey, I've been with these kids. I love these kids. I'm connected with these kids. I can't just quit on them. Like I can take a demotion. I can be an assistant coach to protect the players that I know and the players that I love. And yeah, so I think it was a really good character move for him, obviously.
It was. Yeah. I mean, that's where it came from was character. And when, he had to still learn and grow too, even though he made that decision, there was still additional growth that he had to do. Same thing with Coach Boone. And that's what's interesting here is it's not just the players that are growing. Now, the coaches had to set the stage for it, but they had to grow as well, and so did the community. So when we look at kind of the general topic we're looking at here, and we look at through the lens of Remember the Titans, give us a little bit more information about kind of what Stephen Covey talks about when it comes to behavioral ethics versus character ethics.
Yeah. So I'm going to stay on this like coaching thing because it just popped in my mind. Maybe this thought doesn't work, but a lot of kind of like self-help and a lot of the ways that people try to solve problems are like to change a behavior, right? So here you have the Virginia school districts trying to solve a problem. The behavior they're changing is, hey, we're going to integrate schools and we're going to make an African-American coach the head coach, and we're going to make the stable coach that was there, he's going to be the assistant coach. They changed that behavior, right? Now, there's no guarantee that this change in behavior is going to be successful, right? There's just not. That could have went south as easy as it went north.
For
right?
sure.
That could have been a terrible thing that could ended up with like fights all over the place, right? It wasn't the behavior that made that successful. It was the character development of the coaches and the character that the coaches had. I'm sure that there were other schools that were integrating that did not have near the experience that T.C. Williams had, right? And again, my whole knowledge of this is based on the movie. Like I don't know what's reality and know how much of that was real and how much of it isn't. One of my favorite football coaches ever, Delane Fitzgerald. He's the football coach at Southern Utah University right now, but he grew up in Virginia, and he tells me all the time, "Oh, they got that wrong. They got that wrong. They got that wrong." So, in his opinion, at least, who has some experience with that, they got a lot of that wrong. But so this is all just about based on what the movie reflects, not about what's reality. But that, and I think that's Stephen Covey's point, right? Like you can have a great attitude and you can really push your people to have really, really good attitudes, but unless you like look internal and start inside and change that character, right? Those attitudes and those behaviors aren't really going to give you the result you want. You might get some short-term gains, but if you really want to be successful, you really want to have this kind of growth that you want, it's an inside-out approach, not an outside-in approach. Now, the school district here was definitely an outside-in approach, right? Yeah. But because the coaching staff took that inside-out approach, they were able to be successful.
Yeah, they had to make that decision.
Yeah.
The school district, the state, they couldn't make the character decision for them. All they could do was try to change behavior, and each one of those individuals had to. And I think when we look at the way that kind of the first three habits that Stephen Covey talks about, which is what we're talking about today, unless I'm mistaken, I think that they're called the private victory.
Yeah.
That's what they're called, right?
Yeah, so he splits them up. The first three are private victory, the second three are public victory, right? And until you, and that's why they're 1, 2, and 3, like the inside out approach, right? Until you can have like master yourself, so to speak, and really like make these commitments to yourself, you're not going to be able to have these public victories. So
And so to set the stage for that too, the first three habits we're talking about today, the first one is be proactive.
Mm-hmm.
The second is begin with the end in mind.
Yep.
And then habit 3 is put first things first.
Yep.
So when we talk about be proactive, what does that mean for you in this context of kind of character ethics?
Yeah, so I think, and if you read, for the first time I read Stephen Covey's book was a few years ago, and I've listened to it on audiobooks since then, but I thought this thing was pure gold. Like I'm just sitting there reading this being like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. Oh, I love this so much. It's exactly what I already thought. I just didn't really know that that's what I already thought. And it's exactly what I already perceived. And so I just loved it. But the big thing that I remember feeling and thinking when I first read that is like being proactive is first recognizing that like, hey, you have control here. Like you're not a victim. Don't ever be a victim, right? You have control here. One of the things that he talks about in his book, I think it's under this section that I think was just really insightful to me, is he talks about everybody's got their circle of concern, right? If you list all the stuff that you're concerned about, politics, finances, sports teams, right? Everybody's got this circle of concern. And then you've got what he calls a circle of influence, right? And your circle of influence is usually kind of smaller than your circle of concern, right? But those things that you can influence, right? That's what you should be focused on, and you actually can influence them, right? Like you always can control your attitude. You always can control your effort. I mean, that's one thing that you teach all the time in football. There's only two things you can control: your attitude and your effort. Like there's nothing else that you can control in football and basketball. It's just your attitude and your effort. And nobody else can control those. You always have 100% over that, right? And so being proactive is just about like, I am in control, right? I get to decide how I act. He talks a lot about who's the author who wrote Man's Search for Meaning?
Viktor Frankl.
Viktor Frankl. He talks a ton about Viktor Frankl and Viktor Frankl's experience in the concentration camps, and like how there's this space between something happens to you, this stimulus, and when you respond, there's this space, and that's where all your agency is. Like you get to choose how you respond to something, and that's what's being proactive, right? You absolutely get to choose how you respond to it. And what you choose makes a huge difference in your ability to be successful.
Yeah, and one of the things, and it's I think it fits so well with exactly what you're saying, is a portion from the movie, right, that we talked about a little bit before, but it's when the two captains are talking,
Yeah.
right? Where you have the defensive captain who was one of the black players.
Yeah, Julius, is it Randall?
Yeah, they call him Big Jew.
Yeah.
Right? And then you had the captain of the offense, which was the white kid that had been there before.
Gerry Bertier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're having this problem or this situation, and they're kind of like coming to a head. And I'm just going to read a bit of this here, and then kind of get your take on it. So it starts out with Big Jew, I guess is his name, right? And then he says, "Why should I give a hoot about you, huh? Or anyone else out here? You want to talk about the ways you're captain, right? Right. You got a job? Yeah, I've got a job. You been doing your job? Yeah, I've been doing my job. Then why don't you tell your white buddies to block for Rev better? Because they have not blocked for him worth a plug nickel, and you know it. Nobody plays, yourself included. I'm supposed to wear myself out for the team? What team? Nah. What I'm going to do is look out for myself, and I'm going to get mine. See, man, that's the worst attitude I ever heard. Attitude reflects leadership, Captain."
Yeah.
Oh, man. Those are some powerful words.
Yeah. No, really, Gerry Bertier's not wrong. It's a terrible attitude. Mm-hmm. But he says, attitude reflects leadership, and you're the leader. Like, what are you doing to inspire me to have a better attitude, right?
Yeah, because exactly what he's saying there, right? Like, he had not been blocking like he was supposed to and given himself for the black players on the team.
Yeah.
And that's where it started. And that's why with this attitude that he should have, that Gerry should have, he needed to start with that attitude there and be proactive in the way that he was going to show out for his team.
Yeah. Gerry, let's see if I can kind of go follow your track here. So Gerry Bertier, he's the captain, right? He's not being proactive with his position. He's maybe being demanding. Hey, sure. You guys need to, but he's not using his influence, right? He's complaining that you're having a bad attitude when really in the scene after this is he calls out the offensive line for not blocking for the black quarterback, right? And it causes a little bit of a fight, but there, he had some influence there. He was proactive. He said, okay, what can I do to maybe demand a better attitude or to inspire or influence a better attitude out of my players? And he made that decision. He called out the guy for not blocking, and that was kind of the first step. But yeah, attitude reflects leadership. That's a big quote from that movie for sure.
And as he starts to show by being proactive and having the attitude to put himself out there for all members of the team, regardless of race, then he starts to set the stage for what other people can do too.
Yep.
Like it took him being proactive in that way and took a little reality check from a teammate of his in order for him to see that.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting here is it wasn't necessarily that he wasn't, I don't know, maybe I'm missing this here, but he was still somewhat proactive by like calling out Julius. Hey, your attitude sucks. Like there's some proactivity there, right?
Sure.
He's doing something. He's taking responsibility, but he was focused on other people's responsibility, not on his own.
Yes.
Right. And so proactivity just isn't like pointing fingers, right? Proactivity is again inside out, internal first. Before I worry about what Julius can do, let me take care about what I can do, right? Yeah. It's this inside out approach, which again it just stuck with me so much when I first read Stephen Covey's 7 Habits book, like inside out approach. Stephen Covey talks about a son that he had that like wasn't good at baseball. I wish I could remember this exactly right. He's like, he wasn't good at baseball, and we felt like other parents were getting mad at him, and we were kind of feeling bad about him and all this other kind of stuff. And then he said at some point we sat down and talked about it, him and his wife. And I wish I could remember exactly how he describes this, but I'm gonna do my best. It was kind of like it was really like eye-opening to us to realize that like we kind of cared about the wrong things. Like we felt like he reflected on us, and we wanted him to be good at baseball because it would reflect better on us, or we wanted him to get good grades because it would reflect better on us, right? And what we realized is like internally we were wrong, right? And we had to change the way that we felt about him. We had to change the way that we perceived him, right? And as we worked on changing the way we felt about our son and the way we perceived our son and the way we interacted with our son, all those other things kind of took care of themselves, right? It was this big inside-out approach. Like, we couldn't go fix our kid. We couldn't, like, take him to a batting coach and make him, that was the wrong approach. We had to, like, fix our perspective or the perception that we had on it. We had to change that first, and only after we changed that did we start to see the results. And at that point, probably the results didn't care. They probably didn't care if he was good at baseball once they fixed the way they looked at it, right?
For sure.
But this is Stephen Covey, who, felt like his son was going to reflect on him and had these kind of like external influences changing or informing the way he behaved, and it took this real internal look to like, how do I perceive this? There's a term he uses, and I wish I could remember. Need to change the not our perception, but something like that. Change the way he perceived that, and really looked internally. How do I look at my son? It made a big difference. So it's that being proactive, and those first 3 habits are really all about this like inside. I need to change my character, and I can change my character. That's what being proactive is great about. Like, I'm the programmer of my life. Mm-hmm. I get to program it, right? And that's kind of what habit 2 is about. Like, what program do I want to write, right? But I get to pick the program that I want to write for my life. I really do have that control, and that's what Viktor Frankl's book is all about, right? Like, he's in these concentration camps, but he's still in control of his happiness, and that's the only thing that people can't take away from you is that agency. And so it was just solid gold when I was listening to that. I loved hearing that.
And then as we move into the next habit that he has, it's begin with the end in mind.
Yeah.
So why is that also a powerful factor in somebody being able to do more and be better?
Well, again, you kind of go back to that, like, what program do you want to write? You know what I mean? He talks about it all the time. You want to start climbing a ladder, that's fine, but I'd make sure that ladder's leaned up against the right building, right? You don't want to get to the top of the ladder and be like, oh, hey, this is not where I want to be. He talks a lot about personal statements in this part of his book, if I remember right. Like, you need to kind of have like this personal statement about you need to do some self-review and like, what do I want in life? What are my values? What are the most important to me? And then you need to make decisions based on that, right? Like, you want to write the program that gets you, sure, almost everybody wants to be rich, but does everybody want to be like rich and a sucky person, or do you want to kind of be rich and a good person, right? Or do you
who do you want to become? If part of this life is the process of becoming, then keeping in mind of like, who is it that I want to become? Yeah. So then when I engage in these actions that I do, they're consistent with the person that I want to be. Because if it's all just about money, then the behavior is going to be all over the map and not going to be consistently with where somebody wants to go if they know who they want to be.
Yeah. So beginning with the end in mind, when I first read that, like, as I just kind of reviewed the book and, here are the 7 habits, I go, what are the 7 habits and why is everybody raving about this or whatever? I begin to think like, yeah, sure. Like that seems really easy. But when you talk about the book, it really is, again, about this character ethic, right? Like, begin with the end in mind. Like, the end in mind, sure, on a, in our world, hey, we meet with our clients on the first day, and that's one thing we establish. What are your goals? What is the end in mind, right? Like, what if we can accomplish this, and that's good, right? In the short term, it works in the short term too. The end in mind is that you've maximized your time with your kids, you've maximized the assets you were able to get in this divorce, and you've minimized conflict, right? Those are your goals. That's the end in mind. That's great. Now we can set our strategy based on those goals and get you there. That's really important because the strategy is going to change if the end is changing, right? And so it works in the short term with tasks and with little things like that. But his book is, to start off with, is really about like who you want to be. What are your personal values? What is your personal mission statement? That is the end, right? The end is who you become, not so much like what you've achieved or whatever. It's who you are at the end. And again, it's this inside-out approach. Now, when you get later on into the last 3 habits, you start talking about these public victories, about being successful and making deals happen and getting that divorce with those 3 goals or whatever, right? That comes back into play. So it works on both levels. But to start with, it's this inside out, like, who do I want to be?
Yeah. And then that leads right into habit 3, which is to put first things first. So if you're going to be proactive and you keep the end in mind, so you begin with keeping the end in mind, now you put first things first.
Yeah.
And so how does putting first things first, how is that the next kind of natural sequential thing that comes?
Well, if we go back to our analogy with the divorce, right? Hey, we know what the end in mind is. We want to maximize these 3 things and minimize this conflict, right? If minimizing conflict is one of your goals, right, and the first thing you need to do is not be a jerk to your spouse, right? First thing you need to do is like stop sending mean texts, or right, and so
and that's hard to do for a lot of people because divorce is such an emotional thing. And when we're going through something so emotional and so difficult, it's easy just to be reactive and not proactive. Yeah. But if we know, well, what do I want to have happen in this divorce situation because I've got kids? Well, if the goal is that I want my kids to be happy and well-adjusted, even though I'm going through a divorce, okay, so that's the end in mind. I'm going to be proactive to do it, but what is one of the first things I've got to do? I've got to try to behave. I've got to try to effectively co-parent. I've got to not send that mean, nasty text.
Yeah.
Because if you do, now that destroys what the end is that you had in mind.
Well, and it all works, right? Like internally, like I've got to do this. It's not that I need to send a mean message to my spouse and say, stop being mean to me, right? You piece of crap.
Right. Yeah, because that's what a lot of people do.
Yeah.
You're the problem. You stop doing it. And they might be a problem. But
They
that's
probably
not
are.
starting.
Yeah.
That's not starting with you and what you can control, just like we talked about.
Yeah, they probably are a problem.
Yeah.
Like 100%. But you and your influence is, I need to be proactive. I need to look at me, and I need to make decisions that I can make to get me to the end, to the goal that I have. So when you talk about first things first, to me this has always been like the hardest habit, because this to me requires the most discipline. I can all day draw my circle of influence and draw my circle of concern. I can all day like draft me a personal mission statement and sit and think. I really like that, right? I like kind of thinking about that and what are my values. But this like first thing first, this is kind of where the rubber starts to meet the road for me, right? Like I can sit down in the morning and say, I got to make like these 5 phone calls. I got to get this drafted. I got to get this filed, and then I need to research this, right? And these really are the first things that I need to do today. Yeah. And he said something in his book that I think about a lot when I find myself like not doing the first things first, right? He says, you've got to figure out like evaluate and be the kind of person that keeps the commitments you make to yourself.
It's huge.
Right? Yeah. Like keeping the commitments you make to yourself. That is like to me, I'm sure there's other gold nuggets in there, but that was the one thing that really like stuck out to me when I talk about first things first. Can you keep the commitments you make to yourself? And you've got to do that.
And sometimes that's the easiest one to break, right? Like if you and I are talking and you're like, hey, Ryan, I really need you to go and review this document for me. And I tell you yes, like I'm going to freaking review that document for you, right? Like I am going to do it because I made a commitment to you. On the other hand, if I'm like, hey, tomorrow morning when I get up, I'm going to get up and I'm going to work out and not look at my phone, which is what I've told myself like 1,000 times. And then I so easily break that commitment to myself. I make it and then I so easily break it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I should go back and read this section of his book because that maybe there's some other nuggets in there that can help me. But this is, I would say, like all his 7 habits, this is the one that I struggle with the most.
Sure.
This and then number 7. But keeping those commitments that you make to yourself is just huge. That's what about putting first things first is, right? Identify it, but you've got to figure out a way to like actually make that happen and keep that commitment that you make to yourself.
For sure. So, kind of putting a bow on the idea of the behavioral ethics versus the character ethics and these 3 habits. What's kind of your main takeaway for people when it comes to Remember the Titans and how that really kind of displays in story format, in a story that's based on a true story, some of these things that people could take away when they watch and be like, oh, okay, I'm seeing that. I'm seeing that develop with these real stories, even though maybe some of the facts are changed a little bit and it tells a better story.
Yeah, so I think a good comparison in the movie is this character Gerry Bertier, and then the offensive tackle, and I cannot remember his name. Right, the offensive tackle. There's a scene, and we should watch it, and it would make this so much better. But I think in the movie, if I remember right, Gerry Bertier ends up like kicking the offensive tackle off the team. And the offensive tackle, I'm going to slaughter this a little bit, but the way I remember it is he was like, Coach Boone's not going to kick me off the team. I'm doing everything he asked. I'm meeting all of the behavioral standards that this team has set out for me. Yeah. And that's all I got to do. I'm meeting these behavioral standards, and Coach Boone can't kick me off the team. And maybe he couldn't because he's got to play fair with everybody or whatever. But Gerry Bertier was very clearly, but you're not meeting the character standards, right? You're just not meeting those character standards. And that's why you suck as a lineman. Sure, you're meeting these certain benchmarks, but your character sucks. And that's why we suck. And that's why I'm kicking you off this team, essentially, right? And to me, that's kind of the big difference. And why I love 7 Habits so much is because it's so much more focused on your character and who you are rather than just your actions. I think we all know people that can check a lot of boxes for their actions and their behaviors that really aren't successful or we really don't want to be around, right? Or it's not somebody that you really respect that much. Just like I think we can all know people that maybe don't have those boxes checked that are great people, right? And success, that's Stephen Covey's position from my interpretation of his book is, your character breeds success more than your actions. Another guy that I really like to listen to, Alabama's coach Nick Saban. Mm-hmm. He's got some great one-liners and stuff like that. But he talks about football players in this way a little bit, which Remember the Titans, it kind of works. He says, look, everybody that goes to medical school is smart, but not everybody that goes to medical school makes it to be a doctor or is a good doctor. It takes more than being smart. It's the same thing with football. It takes more than having these certain behaviors of like, I can run fast, or these certain behaviors if I can jump high, or I can catch a football or throw a football. You've got to have the right character to do it. You've got to have the right mental disposition. You've got to have the right internal fortitude, right? And that's what Stephen Covey's book is about. Like, being proactive is developing all these character ethics that make you a successful person, rather than focusing on the behaviors. And Nick Saban's thing. You can't be outcome focused. You've got to be process focused, right? If all you care about is the outcome of winning, and this, I think this applies to divorces too, right? If all you care about is the outcome, right, and not the process, you're going to miss out. You're not going to be successful, because sometimes outcomes are not, what's the right word? They're not an honest evaluation of what happened, right?
Sure. Yes.
Bad
Sometimes
teams beat good teams all the time.
Sometimes wrong decisions are made. Sometimes the court gets it wrong.
Yeah. Right. And so the process, if you're focused on the process, that's where you'll get the most growth, and that's where you get the most happiness, and that's where you get the most success, and the most joy out of the most joy out of everything too, right? Like, this might sound stupid, but I completely believe that you could go through an experience. I was my daughter's playing in the state championship semifinal tonight, right, with the state championship tomorrow. And I was trying to kind of talk, my wife's the head coach, and there's so many emotions going on in my house right now that I'm so thrilled to be, but trying to kind of explain this to him, like, you can go through a season and really grow and have great experiences and just love your teammates and love your coach and love your experience and walk away with a really high memory and growth and just a really positive thing and not win a state championship. And you can also walk away from a season having made enemies and be vile and angry and win a state championship, right? The state championship isn't what determines the success of that season. I mean, a lot of people from the outside might look at it and think that. Yeah. But, and it's the same with the divorce. You can walk away from a divorce. I got to keep the house. I got to keep the kids 60% of the time, and I got to keep this investment account, right? And it be a really terrible thing for your kids and be a really terrible thing for you and your growth. Or you can walk away from a divorce sometimes being like, I might not have got the best deal financially in that, or I might not have got, but like what I did get is, this quality time with my kids. Quality is more important than quantity. And, so the outcome is not always the best factor to determine success, I guess, is what I'm saying there.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And when it comes to character, I mean, one of my favorite things I've heard about it is that character is revealed when your values align with your behavior. So when the values that you have and that you claim to have and that you espouse, when your behaviors are consistent with those values, now that's where your true character is revealed. And that character that we want to have, we want to strive for, it's, again, who we want to become.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to take you to a little fun segment here real quick as we finish, okay? This first one is going to be called This or That.
All right.
So you've got to choose this or that, and be prepared. It might be controversial, so let's hear what you have to say. Okay, here we go. Here's the first one. Offense or defense?
Defense.
Defense. And that's because you were a safety and a cornerback.
And I just wasn't good at offense.
That's fair. Running stadium steps or film room study?
I'm gonna say film room study.
Okay.
And I don't know what would I prefer? A film room study to me is gonna give more benefit than running stadium steps.
Okay, love it. Team captain or quiet leader?
Quiet leader.
Okay. Tough love coach or encouraging mentor?
So I'm probably in the minority here, but I have always my whole life responded much better to tough love than like encouragement. And I would sometimes get frustrated if I had a coach that was just like, hey, you're doing so good, keep it up. I don't want to know. I want to know. I want somebody in my face telling me like, you maggot, you suck. You need what I mean? Like,
do this.
Like,
do this
you
better.
caught 9 passes, you need to catch 10. You know, like I always, for whatever reason, have responded much better to like the tough love in your face, kind of inspiring. And the Bobby Knight style coach, right?
Sure.
Like that the stuff always, I just responded to that better. And I feel bad that there's really not a space for that in sports today.
Sure. Yeah, because it's not.
There's
no more
and
Bobby
I get
Knights.
why there's not.
There's no more Rick Majerus's.
Yeah.
No question.
I was glad that I played in an era where we could have those kind of coaches.
Yeah.
I feel like they made me better.
Yeah,
sure.
Fair enough. Okay, football or basketball?
Basketball, believe it or not. I've always loved basketball more than football.
Actually, when I was writing this question, I was like, well, of course it's going to be football. He played football. We're talking about football. It's basketball. Interesting.
So, yeah. I'll tell you this way. There were plenty of, I mean, there's some nuances here. I went to basketball practice. I went to football practice every day, and you practice, Monday through Friday or Monday through Thursday, and you play on Friday or play on Saturday, depending where, I never played on Sunday. I wasn't that good. But there's nothing better than like Friday Night Lights or Saturday night. That is like the cream of the creme to me. But I went to lots of football practices where I'm in that line stretching before practice starts, and I'm thinking like, okay, I got to get my mind right. Like, I don't want to be here. I've got to figure out how to want to be here. I've got to figure out how to want to be better because, it's all about getting better every day, right? And I never went through that with basketball. Like basketball I never didn't want to be at a basketball practice. I never didn't want to be traveling with the bat. Like everything, but it was just always fun. Practices are sometimes even more fun than the games to me because it's the same compete. You can't compete in football with game intensity for the entire practice. You can for a few snaps here and but it's just too violent and too. And that's why I think I probably picked basketball. And still to this day, I can go play basketball. Yeah. I can't remember the last time I put on a helmet and tackled somebody, right?
Basketball's so great.
I went and played pickup basketball last week.
Basketball was my love growing up. I just wasn't good enough to play to any degree.
I wasn't either.
After freshman year, I was no longer on the team. But boy, I'm with you. There was never a time where I didn't enjoy playing basketball.
Yeah.
Every practice, every goofing off with my friends, I was playing all the time, and I always wanted to play more. I couldn't get enough. Okay, early morning workout or evening workout?
Well, this is flipping on me a little bit. My whole life, I've been an early morning workout guy.
And now you're not?
My whole life. We're talking like the last 2 weeks.
Okay.
I've kind of
recency bias. Okay.
Yeah, I've started kind of doing this like evening workout.
Sometimes you need to change the pace.
My evenings have started to be just a little bit more free. I'm still going to go with early morning though. Now, the more I think about it, it's just more likely to happen in the morning.
Yeah, that's what it is. I know that I'll do it. I'll skip that if it's at night.
Yeah.
Susan be like, nah, I'm going to bed.
Yeah.
All right, let's get a rapid fire, okay? So this is how we'll end with rapid fire. So it's just the first thing that comes to your mind.
All right.
All right, you ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
Favorite Disney movie?
Remember the Titans.
Okay, totally fair. That one, I thought that would be the case, but favorite Disney song?
I'm embarrassed to say this.
Don't be at all. Look, this is like a Disney type podcast, so you're not going to be. You don't need to be embarrassed.
There's a Disney movie called Zombies.
Oh yeah,
and it's got this.
Which song on that?
Someday in Zombies. A little embarrassed to admit it. But yeah,
yes, but totally okay. Zombies acceptable. Disney has some of these more recent ones they've been putting straight onto their Disney Plus, like Zombies and Descendants and those. And my kids love those shows.
Yeah, I still got 3 kids that are 11 and under at home. And
so yeah, they're totally soaking those up. I love it. Favorite Disney princess?
Vanellope Cruz.
Vanellope.
Yeah, from Wreck-It Ralph.
Yeah, she's a fun character. She's got a little sass to her.
Yeah,
she's
sense of humor. Yeah.
She does. Her and Ralph's cadence is really good. It's a fun duo there. Favorite Disney hero?
Hercules.
I think underappreciated maybe when it came out. When I've rewatched it, it's really good. It didn't do great in the box office. It was amongst like some of those shows that during that time with Disney, they'd kind of fallen off from their late 80s, early 90s like peak. I still think it's quality though.
It's kind of animated a little different if I remember too. Like the character drawings were a little different.
They decided to keep more of like the original animation style as opposed to going to more CG. They had some CG, like a couple of the magical creatures that he fought were, but most of it was still done with traditional hand-drawn animation. Yeah. So kind of bridging the two in that show. Favorite Disney villain?
Ursula.
Ursula's a good one.
Yeah.
She's creepy and funny and great villain song, right? Poor Unfortunate Souls is such a good villain song. Favorite coach from any sports movie?
Coach Carter.
Now, Coach Carter, I actually didn't mention this before. I'm not really sure that I know Coach Carter. What is that?
You know what? That might not be Disney.
Well, it doesn't have to be Disney. This is any coach from any
Carter,
sports movie.
Again, it's a Virginia basketball story.
Okay.
Coach, it's Samuel L. Jackson plays the character.
Oh, okay. Now I'm seeing it.
Yeah.
Now I'm seeing it.
Goes and takes over this kind of rough bunch of kids that want to play basketball, turn into a real good basketball team.
Yeah, totally makes sense now. Now it's coming. Now I'm seeing it. Favorite book? I didn't ask you this one before.
Ooh.
Favorite book?
I am in love with the Pierce Brown Red Rising series.
Really?
Yeah.
No, it's on my wish list on Audible.
Oh my gosh.
So I need to
I'm
go
like-
with it.
Yeah, I'm just chomping at the bit for book 7 to come out. I think July of this year, book 7 comes out.
Oh, so there's 6.
Yeah, so there's two trilogies. So first 3 books is kind of
Okay.
its own trilogy, and then book 4 kicks in 10 years later,
Okay.
right? And
So some similar characters, but some probably new ones.
I mean, I don't want to spoil too much for you.
Okay, fair.
This
I just need to
book's-
read it.
This book got tons of. If
Okay.
we talk about any of it, we're going to spoil all. Like it's got tons of.
Oh,
But
okay.
yeah, I'm like
Okay,
it's like high on my list right now.
good. I
love
just
it.
finished Chasing Dreams by Bob Weiss, which
Okay.
he was president of Walt Disney Imagineering.
Okay.
Super interesting book, but I just finished it last night.
Okay.
So I'm like ready to start the next book. So maybe it needs to be Red Rising.
Yeah. So I don't know what your like book system is. I sometimes will get sucked into sucked into fiction books and fantasy and
Oh, yeah.
space opera type books. So I try to like kind of like one book that's just for pure pleasure, and then like a self-help book, like a Stephen Covey book or something like that.
So there, because the book right before this I read was the most recent Dresden Files book.
Okay.
Do you know Dresden Files at
I
all?
haven't done Dresden
he's
Files.
He's a wizard in Chicago.
Okay.
And the author has a lot of like pop culture references and stuff all the time. It's
Okay.
present day Chicago, and he's a wizard.
Okay.
And he's a detective. So that's kind of the premise of the book. And I think it's like 13 or 14 books in
Oh,
now. So
wow.
they're not all super long. But that most recent one came out, and so I just finished that one before this book because I'm the same way. I like to have a little bit of fantasy or sci-fi or fun, and then more like what can I do for self-improvement and learning and growing. So
and I'm not great at like finish and start. Like I kind of like they mesh. You know, I'm
Oh,
a few
he's
chapters
like,
into one.
okay.
But so yeah, Red Rising.
okay.
Download it tonight and start.
Okay,
It's
I'm
great.
here for it. I'm here for it. Okay, so as we kind of wrap up in total, just kind of like closing thoughts. I mean, for me, one of the reasons why I like Remember the Titans for what we're talking about is as it relates specifically to why we have this podcast, the idea of yes and. Because during this time, with the segregation that was there in Virginia and all the tough things that were going along, it needed an acknowledgement that those things were happening. So yes, this is the reality of what we're facing. We are facing this reality of there is still segregation that's going on here. The school district is making this decision to do something, and we now have a choice to do something different. And we now have a choice to choose character over what the past was, choose character over simply behaviors, and become something different. So I think this movie really captures that idea of who we can become and some of these habits that we talked about. And so when we think about the 3 actionable takeaways that we want somebody to have going forward, that something that somebody can put into action, you know, today or this week or this month to really start to look at their character. What would those 3 recommended actionable takeaways be?
So the first one, and this is actually a Red Rising reference.
Okay.
But change your paradigm, right?
Okay.
And so Stephen Covey talks about this too, but I think that's kind of funny. So Stephen Covey, I would say the first thing is be willing to change your paradigm or change your paradigm. So if there's a problem in your life right now, some kind of conflict, some kind of hurdle you're trying to get at, and you're looking at that, like be willing to consider a different way to look at it or change your view or your map of that issue, right? And remember the Titans, right? The paradigm was racist.
Yes.
Right? We don't want the other race. We want segregation. That was the paradigm, right? They were willing to change that. Like, I'm going to look at this not from a position of racism, but from more of a position of humanity.
Yeah.
I'm going to look at this person individually. I'm going to look at Julius and determine, like, is he a good dude? Is he a terrible dude? Do I like him? Do I not like him? Right? But I'm going to look at that from a different paradigm. And so change your paradigm. If you're really struggling to get over something, you're really struggling with something, change your paradigm. That's the first takeaway. Second takeaway is evaluate your center, right? Like what is at my center? What is causing me to make the decisions? Like, why am I going to work today? Why am I treating my kid this way? Why am I being, is it because I want money? Is it because I want success? Is it because I want to grow? Like identify what is at your center, and then compare that. The third takeaway would be to like have that mission statement, that personal mission statement. What are my values? And make sure that what's at my center is consistent with what my values are.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So, I mean, that's what we'd encourage anybody listening is coming back to what our underlying personal mission statement is, our purpose, having that ground us so that it will change and affect the behaviors that we do. Because if we're changing the character first, if we're changing our underlying, like, this is truly why I want to do something, these are the values that I have, I can now look at things differently because I'm keeping that greater purpose in mind. Now behaviors will naturally follow. They'll be the byproduct of changing those things. So those are some great takeaways.
Yeah, it's the byproduct of your character, not this like big decision to do something. Yeah, it's great.
For sure. Well, thanks for being on today, Shea. Appreciate your time, and we'll close for now.
Thanks.
As you leave this conversation, remember that yes, the past can hurt, and you can either run from it or you can learn from it. So here's to learning and finding joy in the journey. See you real soon.